Hey there, and welcome to my 2025 top 5 Oracle decks of the year. If you haven't caught my top tarot decks of the year, make sure you go ahead and give that a watch as well. This video will be very similar to that. We're keeping it short, sweet, and simple with my top 5, but actually top 6 Oracle decks of this year. So let's just get right into it and cut out the nonsense. So, the Road to Nowhere was my unicorn deck that I received this year, and this is certainly a top Oracle deck for me. I wanted to bring in the Pixie as the number 6, and once again, these are in no means ranked or shown in any sort of order. So the Pixie and I have a difficult relationship. So let's talk about it with the cards. Now, the Pixie for me, I picked up because I desperately wanted the Road to Nowhere, and I didn't want the Pixie to turn into a Road to Nowhere situation where it's no longer in print, I can no longer get my hands on it, and it cost a pretty penny to do so. So I went ahead and picked this up maybe a couple years ago, and there's so many things I love about it, but if you watch my top 5 of 2025 tarot deck video, you will know that I really try to push myself with collage decks this year specifically, still within my preferences and taste range, but I really tried not to be a harsh critic. Because there's so many cards I love in here, there's also some that I absolutely do not like. And that's fine. And I can get over that. And that's why I've held on to the deck. But when I got in the Road to Nowhere, I couldn't be happier. And in turn, it makes me really happy to have the Pixie as well, so I can have more of the completed collection. What I absolutely love about the Road to Nowhere, and similar to the Pixie, is the limited use of collage pieces. There's very clear indication of those pieces. Now, the Pixie is mixed media. I love the simplicity of the collage work. I love this yellow gold border. I think it sets off the artwork really well. It keeps it very graphic and vibrant. And the fact that I was lucky enough to be able to bring this into my collection, I couldn't not put it on this list of top 5 because it is my absolute favorite collage Oracle deck. Maybe even just collage deck in general. The thing with collage that I have a tough time with is that I like images and cutouts from a certain time period and certain time periods mixed together. Certain themes as well. So when cutouts start to go in too much of a cultural direction that I'm not a part of or that I don't study, that doesn't speak to me, and visually I don't necessarily jive with it. But this year has really made me push through that a bit more. And so this makes this deck an impactful and inspirational and a deck I just love, which in turn is making me love the Pixie as well. The 𝐒𝐤𝐿 Oracle is an absolutely stunning animal oracle deck. I was absolutely blown away when I brought this into my collection and finally had the deck to flip through and look through. I bought it on a bit of a whim. I liked a few of the cards. It felt unique. So I went ahead and picked it up. And when I actually flipped through the cards, this deck definitely felt different. So let's look at the cards. What I found really inspirational about this deck is the use and the mixing of phrases, titles, and keywords that are incorporated into the artwork itself. The illustrations really embrace those titles in the composition. It feels a part of the illustration. Also, it feels like art. You know, it's not the single keyword of leaf, which is fine. And I have plenty of those decks and I love plenty of those decks. But the mixing and matching of some of this art styles, we can see there's some embroidery. We have a clean white background versus a fully illustrated card really ties it together and doesn't make it feel like there's outlier cards. I love the use of elements of nature in this deck with not only the animals. I feel like sometimes people express that they have a hard time with animal decks, and I will admit I do have a hard time understanding that because I am someone that naturally leans into animals, into objects of nature versus people. I have not been one to connect with people in that way, especially in a deck sense. I've always been someone who connects with animals. I want to be around animals. I want to talk to animals, all of that thing. So I've never been a heavy, people-y connected person. Wow, that's funny to say because there's so many things in my life that I love helping others. Not only animals, I love helping humans as well. And there's just been times and instances and things I've been involved in that speak to that, but just on a very like fundamental personal level, animals are my thing. And I feel like this might be a beautiful mix of animals and nature for someone that maybe feels like they aren't that. If you're into more of this sort of conceptual, artsy take on phrases and titles and keywords in a deck. So this deck feels very unique to me in that sense. It definitely had an impact in my practice because of that. This felt like it opened doors for other decks for me. Once again, I feel like these top decks I'm selecting for the Oracle decks and for my tarot decks of 2025 have opened doors to other things. Not just I loved it, of course, I love them, but they unlocked something for me. And that is the beauty of having decks, of reading tarot. And this deck was definitely one that hit on so many layers and levels for me. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised I don't see it floating around YouTube more often. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful deck. The next Oracle that felt really important and special to me this year is Into the Lonely Woods. This deck, I would say, maybe isn't one that I would have guessed to go to right away, but the time, the place, the moment when this deck really spoke to me and when I brought it into my collection couldn't have been more important and impactful, and I'm so glad that I have this now. First and foremost, I want to say, if you have my deck, the Folkloric Forest Tarot, and you have this deck, or you're interested in this deck and have my Forest Tarot, please pair them together because it's absolutely amazing and one of the reasons why I love this deck so much, because it softens the Folkloric Forest Tarot. It adds more of this emotional connection element to it, and they work perfectly together. So that was a huge pairing for me with this deck this year. I absolutely love the mood of this deck. I think the phrases here really play and speak well to the artwork. I don't reference the guidebook too much. I definitely skim over an entry when I'm in those sort of moods, but the phrases along with interpreting the artwork goes so far already. It's just a beautiful deck. I feel like it fits a space that's needed in decks. It holds a space of melancholy, right? There's also hope in this though as well. It has those sort of lights and darks in terms of emotion and mood and seasons as well. I feel like the environments here and the use of color really speak well to all four seasons. It speaks to the highs of emotions, to the lows of emotions. It has a beautiful use of inclusion of nature and these very like where the wild things are creatures, while humans are also present in there as well. It is just a really soft when you need it kind of deck. And that was important for me this year. And that felt impactful. And it really holds a spot for me in my collection and in my use of decks. It's just one of those that I won't let go. And I love when I pull this out. It calls when it needs it, right? It's one of those. The Oracle of Rewilding is probably my top mass market Oracle deck of this year. This has an absolutely unique concept and art execution from any mass market deck that I think has currently been put out on the market. I love the concept of this deck. We have the shapeshifters along with humans and their animal companions. The use of painting on antique photographs for the artwork has this very otherworldly vibe. It feels really unique. I'm so inspired by this deck. I love the artwork in here. I love the guidebook, and I love the keywords or phrases that were selected. Feels very usable, very pliable to go a certain way that you are shifting your reading or not. It doesn't feel stiff, I guess, in the terms of like its uses. I just think this is a beautifully executed deck. It feels thoughtful, it feels purposeful. It doesn't feel like a throwaway in terms of like pumping out deck after deck after deck. This feels like almost an heirloom deck in a way, like one that you get and you keep. And that's certainly the case for me. I have to try not to use this deck. Once again, it's one of those for me. Like I mentioned in my tarot video, I really try to rotate through my deck collection because I do have a fair amount of them. And this is one that always calls me over and over and over again. It's fantastic. The colors are great. It pairs beautifully with many different deck styles. It's one of those where it's rather unexpected of what it will pair with. I feel like that's the case with my Coastal Curiosities deck. You look at it first, you're like, gosh, what am I gonna pair with this thing? And then you end up pairing it over and over and over again with so many different styles and themes that you wouldn't necessarily a fitting case for it. This was one that I just absolutely adored and loved to use. It's just brilliant. And for my last Oracle deck of my tops for 2025, we have the Citadel Oracle. This definitely held a special place in my practice this year. The archetypes were definitely hitting, and the visuals were also pairing so well with many of my deck edits. So while this is one that has a very game-driven theme and style, it doesn't necessarily sit and stay in that place. And I think that's what's so awesome about this deck and why I fell so in love using it this year. It feels very open-ended. I love the titles and then the keywords underneath. The artwork is gorgeous and pairs with so much. Once again, in my tarot video, I talked about black and white decks in my collection and how that was a big thing for me this year. And this one, with its archetypes, really opened up a space in my reading practice to interpret and read in a slightly different way, to bring in this layer of archetypes and apply it to my readings that I didn't necessarily do before. So this one, I feel like, is such a stronghold. If you remove the idea of this fantasy game aspect to it, which I think it does that beautifully as well, but just as more of this cool object, nature, person sort of vibe, this is an amazing Oracle deck to bring in. I love reading with it. I love pairing with it. I've had some amazing pairings and readings with this deck. I feel like maybe, is it underrated or has it just gone under the radar because it's a few years out from being released now and all of that? I don't know. I just really, really love it. And I think it's such a strong deck to use as an anchor in your spread. This was definitely an impactful and loved deck this year. All right, well, that is that for my top Oracle decks of 2025. Do you have any of these decks? Were any of these on your list? I would love to know and chat below in the comments. These were definitely a beautiful balance of impactful, inspirational, and well-loved decks in my practice this year. I cannot wait to see what 2026 brings for decks and practices and all those things. So do let me know down below. I'd love to have a chat. And thanks for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed these selects and the reasonings why. And until next time, I'll talk to you then. Bye.